again, I would tell you that Roe versus Wade, decided in 1973, is a precedent in the United States Supreme Court. It has been reaffirmed. The reliance interest considerations are important there, and all of the other factors that go into analyzing precedent have to be considered. It is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. It was reaffirmed in Casey in 1992 and in several other cases. So a good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court, worthy as treatment of precedent like any other.
And one of the important things to keep in mind about Roe v. Wade is that it has been reaffirmed many times over the past 45 years, as you know. And most prominently, most importantly, reaffirmed in Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992. And as you well recall, Senator, I know when that case came up, the Supreme Court didn't just reaffirm it in passing. The court specifically went through all the factors of stare decisis in considering whether to overrule it. And the joint opinion of Justice Kennedy, Justice O'Connor, and Justice Souter at great length went through those factors. That was the question presented in the case.
I do not believe that Brett Kavanaugh will overturn.
His precedents are overturned.
Again, I can't pre-commit or say, yes, I'm going in with some agenda, because I'm not. I don't have any agenda. I have no agenda to try to overrule Casey. I have an agenda to stick to the rule of law and decide cases as they come.
So that was a fucking lie.
Gosh, I wonder what I should talk about today. How about the news that Monday night Politico revealed that they were in possession of a leaked document showing that the Supreme Court of the United States has voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, the landmark case that secured the right to women's bodily autonomy. A quick note here, abortion rights affect everyone, whether they can get pregnant or not, but it especially affects people with uteruses. That includes people who aren't women. And there are many women, who don't have functional uteruses. I default to talking about how this affects women because this is at its heart a movement that seeks to control women, to force them to give birth against their will, and to keep them subservient to men. But do please keep in mind that there are a lot of men who are directly and severely impacted by this as well. So we all knew that this was coming, but it's still a shock. Even for me, who has been publicly, vociferously saying that this was their goal for a decade now, even I have to say that I'm blown away by how hateful Samuel Alito's draft statement is. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. It's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. It's pretty direct. And a lot of people are spending their time trying to figure out who leaked this statement, but don't listen to them. It doesn't matter. And it's absurd that so many people are clutching their pearls at the fact that the least democratic and least transparent arm of our government is suddenly tipping their hand. As Paul Campos wrote over on Lawyers, Guns, and Money about the, quote, most absurd branch of our government, the Supreme Court of the United States is, among other things, a kind of self-appointed super legislature. And the idea that its deliberations and opinions should be treated like the products of the confessional rather than what they are, which is just quasi-legislative bureaucratic haggling, but with far more pomposity attached, is yet another thing about our very special system of government that needs to die in a fire. Also very direct. I appreciate it. As this is just a draft statement that's been leaked, it doesn't go into effect immediately. As Politico points out, usually these things get edited a bit, and sometimes a justice will even change their vote before they go public. But it seems like no matter what, in the next few months, women's bodily autonomy will be set back 50 years, leading to the immediate outlawing of abortion in about half of the country, mostly the South and Midwest. States like California have pledged to protect residents and likely abortion tourists with actions like a possible amendment to the state constitution. But if you've watched my channel in the past, then you know that striking down Roe v. Wade isn't the end. There's always more of the wedge to push through. After those states that are controlled by the religious right outlaw abortion, the next major step will be a federal abortion ban. And we know that because, as the Washington Post reported this week, anti-choice activists and lawmakers have been talking about this openly, planning their next move after the SCOTUS decision becomes official. The only upside to the inevitable federal abortion ban attempt is that we will finally stop hearing from the states' rights assholes. Meanwhile, the average American doesn't want abortion to be outlawed at the federal or the state level. For the past several decades, polls have remained about the same as what CBS found in a survey last week. 70% of Americans think the decision on whether or not to abort should be between a woman and her doctor. Nearly 60% of Americans think abortion should be legal in most or all cases. Only 28% of Americans think Roe should be overturned. Because when you really distill this stuff down to its essence, most Americans believe in personal bodily autonomy. Since this country's founding, we've crowed about freedom, believing that your personal liberty shouldn't be curtailed, even if it means that some people, like real, living, breathing people, would die because of your choice. For instance, if a person dies in a car wreck, doctors can't give their organs to a patient in the next bed dying from incurable liver disease unless the now corpse agreed to it before dying. The corpse has no need for the liver, I assure you. There's literally no downside to taking it and giving it to someone who will die without it. But we decided as a nation that the corpse's bodily autonomy is worth more than that other person's life. This is very stupid, for the record. But what it means, in light of the Supreme Court decision, is that a dead body has more of a right to their body than the average American woman. And the average American gets that. The average American wants a woman to be able to say, no, actually, I don't want this clump of cells to take over my body and put me at risk of life-threatening conditions. As always, whenever I talk about abortion, I also need to point out that even the minority of Americans who do want abortion outlawed are either lying or mistaken when they say that they think outlawing abortion will stop abortions from happening. The preponderance of evidence that we've had for some time now shows us that when a nation or a state makes abortion more difficult to access, the number of abortions do not decrease. And in fact, some countries that have banned abortion actually have an increased number of abortions compared to countries with fewer restrictions. Women will continue to seek out abortions, but if they can't get them safely and legally, they are more likely to get desperate, and they're more likely to get unsafe procedures, which increases the number of dead women. In fact, you can even see that here in the United States. After Roe v. Wade, the number of abortions went down, along with the number of women dying from unsafe abortions. This current ruling will reverse that trend. The ramifications of the SCOTUS ruling don't stop the loss of bodily autonomy and access to healthcare, though. Alito's main argument is that Roe v. Wade is trash because abortion isn't listed in the Constitution as a right. Here are some other things that aren't in the Constitution: right to contraception, interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, which is on the chopping block right now in Texas. So that's something to look forward to. There are ways to stop this all from happening, of course. President Biden and the congressional Democrats could work to kill the filibuster, which would then enable them to pass a bill expanding the Supreme Court. Though, as I've already mentioned, a lot of experts already seem to think that the Supreme Court is a fundamentally shitty idea that needs a complete overhaul. Like, seriously, we should really consider nerfing the Supreme Court in Democracy 2.0. Another option is for Congress to pass the Women's Health Protection Act that would codify the right to abortion. They could have done this anytime in the last 50 years. They chose not to. It actually failed earlier this year because of the filibuster. So again, the filibuster needs to go first. I know that all of this is frustrating because it's in the hands of assholes who none of us really wanted representing us in the first place. The conservative Supreme Court justices were mostly nominated by Republican presidents who lost the popular vote. The Congress critters who are failing to stand up for women won their seats through gerrymandering that invalidates progressive votes. They're beholden not to the voter, but to the wealthy and powerful minority religious right, plus a few industries like pharmaceutical and oil and gas. The whole thing is frustrating, which is why I pop a blood vessel every time I see someone tell me that the solution is to vote. Voting is part of the solution, especially in all of those elections that most Americans don't seem to think matter, like the midterms and the state and local elections. But it's also important to burn shit down. Not literally YouTube monetization policy, I promise, but we do have to agitate. We have to get out into the streets. We have to demand that our representatives do the right thing because we need real systemic change and we need to fix our broken political system to actually turn it into a democracy that runs on the will of the people while still protecting marginalized minorities. In the meanwhile, please consider supporting your local abortion fund. Links are in the transcript, which you can find a link to below. These are groups that help bridge the gap for people who need abortions but don't know where to turn or who don't have money or transportation or childcare in order to get the help they need. You can also help organizations like Plan C, which might be what we need to decouple maternal mortality from abortion restrictions. You see, abortion care has come so far in the past few decades that now it's possible to get an abortion at home by taking pills that are actually safer than aspirin. Plan C is working to make those pills available over the counter, allowing women to get abortions safely and easily without needing to travel to a clinic for overnight care. Just the Pill is another great organization that's helping women get abortion pills delivered to them after a telehealth appointment with the doctor. The 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court may have tried to send us back to 1972, but the fact of the matter is that they can't. Because to do that, they'd have to get rid of the internet and 50 years of medical advances. Democracy might be dying, but the feminist movement is not.